The sun hung low over the dusty plains, painting the horizon in streaks of gold and crimson, when Thaddeus McAllister finally rode up to the weathered property. The wind carried a faint scent of sagebrush and the faint tints of old timber, and for a moment, he simply stared at the crumbling structure before him. A house that had been sold for a single dollar, one measly dollar. To anyone else, it would have seemed like a fool's errand. But to Thaddeus, who had spent years scraping together what little fortune he possessed, it was an opportunity he could not let slip through his calloused fingers. He swung down from his horse, the leather of his saddle creaking under his weight, and ran a hand along the rough-hewn fence that surrounded the property. The wood was warped and splintered in places, but it held a stubborn dignity, as if it had weathered storms and droughts that would have broken a lesser dwelling. Thaddeus squinted at the windows, most of them clouded with years of grime, and wondered what secrets the house held. He had heard rumors whispered in the dim corners of the town saloon about the old McGrath homestead. Strange things, peculiar happenings, whispers of voices in the night. But Thaddeus wasn't one to let superstition dictate his choices. He was a man of action, a man who trusted in his own hands and eyes. He pushed open the front gate, which groaned like an old beast disturbed from slumber. The yard was overgrown, wild grasses curling around the base of a dilapidated well, and the wind tugged at his coat as though nudging him forward. He approached the door, noticing the faint smell of smoke lingering in the air, as if someone had recently tended a fire. His heart beat a little faster, not out of fear, but anticipation. A new life, a new beginning, and all for the price of $1. He lifted the rusted iron latch and stepped inside. The house was dim, the fading light through the grimy windows casting long shadows across the worn wooden floorboards. Dust motes danced lazily in the air, disturbed by his every step. Thaddeus ran a hand along the wall, feeling the grooves and knots of the aged wood. And for a moment, he could almost hear the echoes of a family long gone, the laughter of children, the scuff of boots on these very boards, the low murmur of domestic life. The place had a heartbeat, quiet but persistent. Then he heard it, a soft, rhythmic thud coming from the kitchen. At first he thought it might be rats or the settling of the old house, but the sound was deliberate, too measured to belong to mere animals. He moved cautiously down the narrow hall, his boots creaking with each step, and pushed open the swinging door into the kitchen. What he saw made him freeze. 3 women stood there, each taller than any he had ever encountered, their presence commanding the small room. Their hair fell in waves of midnight and chestnut, their eyes sharp and watchful. Their hands moved with confidence as they stirred, chopped, and arranged items on the worn countertops. The kitchen itself was modest but alive, with copper pots hanging from the ceiling and the faint aroma of bread baking in the old brick oven. Thaddeus swallowed hard, his mouth suddenly dry. He had expected an empty house, perhaps a few signs of squatters, maybe even an old caretaker. But 3 towering women, working in unison, as if they had lived here forever, was something else entirely. He could feel the air shift around them, thick with energy and authority, and for a moment he wondered if he had stumbled into some other world. The tallest of the 3 glanced up at him, her piercing green eyes locking onto his. She did not speak at first, but the silence itself was heavy, filled with unspoken questions. Thaddeus cleared his throat, forcing a smile that felt awkward and small. I just bought this place," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Figured I'd come see it for myself." The woman's lips curved slightly, almost imperceptibly. She tilted her head as if considering whether he was a threat, or perhaps a curiosity. The other 2 women stopped their work, watching him with a mix of caution and curiosity. There was an undeniable sense of rhythm between them, a silent language that only they seemed to understand. Thaddeus felt like an intruder stepping into a world already perfectly aligned without him. "I see," she said finally, her voice low but strong, resonating through the small room. "And you are?" "Thaddeus McAllister," he replied. "Just new here, looking to make this house my own?" There was a pause, long enough for him to feel the weight of it pressing against his chest. The women exchanged glances, subtle movements that spoke volumes. Finally, the second one spoke, her tone softer, but equally commanding. "You're a long way from the nearest town, Mr. McAllister. This isn't a place most men come to lightly." Thaddeus nodded, feeling a bead of sweat form at his temple. "I reckon I'm aware of that," he said. "Whoa! But I've handled tough lands and tougher winters." This he gestured around the kitchen, The walls, the beams above. Seems like it could be a start. The tallest woman stepped closer, her gaze unwavering. A start? She asked, her voice carrying a weight that made him catch his breath. You've bought this house for $1, yet you don't know what you've really acquired. Do you even understand what lives here? Thaddeus opened his mouth to respond, but the words caught in his throat. He glanced at the other two women, noting their subtle nods and the way they positioned themselves, almost like guardians of something sacred. It was clear they were not ordinary inhabitants. They carried an authority that surpassed the ordinary, as if the very walls of the house bowed to their presence. I thought it was abandoned, he said finally, his voice steadier than he felt. I didn't expect anyone here. I mean, no harm. The tallest woman studied him for a long moment, then turned her gaze toward the kitchen window, her profile sharp against the fading sunlight. Harm? She echoed. No one here has ever been harmed. But that doesn't mean everyone who walks through that door leaves unchanged. Thaddeus's heart pounded in his chest. He had faced storms, wild animals, and men with guns. He had ridden across deserts and through snowdrifts, but the tension in this room was unlike anything he had known. The house, the women, even the air itself seemed alive, aware, and waiting for him to prove himself worthy. He took a cautious step forward. Then, what should I do? The woman's lips curved into a faint, enigmatic smile. Watch, listen, learn, she said. Only then will you understand what it means to truly own a place like this. And only then will you see if this house accepts you. Thaddeus swallowed again, feeling the enormity of her words press against his chest. He had bought a house for $1, expecting a simple new life. Instead, he had walked into a puzzle, a mystery, and a challenge that he could not yet comprehend. The three women returned to their tasks, their movements fluid, powerful, and utterly unhurried, as if the house itself had dictated the pace of life here. And Thaddeus realized that, for the first time in years, he felt a spark of something he had thought lost forever: uncertainty, excitement, and the unshakable pull of destiny. Whatever awaited him in this house, whatever secrets these towering women held, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Life as he had known it was over, and a new story was just beginning. He took a deep breath, squared his shoulders, stepped further into the kitchen, into the unknown, aware that the moment he fully committed, nothing would ever be the same. And as the sun dipped behind the distant hills, shadows stretching long and dark across the floorboards, Thaddeus understood that his journey had only just begun. Thaddeus stayed frozen for a moment, watching the three women move through the kitchen with quiet precision. Every chop of the knife against the cutting board, every swirl of a spoon in a steaming pot seemed deliberate, almost ritualistic. He realized he could learn a lot from them if he only had the courage to step closer. But caution tugged at him, reminding him that he was an outsider, stranger in a house that had been lived in long before he had even considered buying it. The tallest of the women turned her attention back to him, her green eyes sharp as flint. You must know, she said slowly, that this house, it is not merely a dwelling. It has a memory, a rhythm, and it has seen things that many men would not believe. People come and go, but the house endures, and those who live within it must learn to move with it, or they are lost. Thaddeus nodded, though a knot of unease tightened in his chest. He'd built his life on hard labor and common sense, not superstition or tales of haunted homesteads. Yet there was something about the way she spoke, the unyielding authority in her tone, that made him feel smaller than he had in years. He glanced around the kitchen once more, noticing details he hadn't seen before: the worn grooves in the counter where countless knives had sliced bread and meat, the scratches on the floorboards where chairs had been dragged back and forth, and the faint carvings along the walls, initials and symbols almost hidden beneath layers of age. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I mean, you three? You've been here all this time?" The second woman paused and looked directly at him. Her hair was a deep chestnut, and her eyes were a warm amber. Yet there was a hardness to her gaze that made Thaddeus think she had seen more than her fair share of hardship. "We are the keepers," she said simply. "The house, it chooses who is worthy. Some are never meant to stay. Some leave without understanding what they walked into. You've been chosen differently." Thaddeus frowned. He had expected a simple house, perhaps some repairs, and a few days of hard work. But the notion that the house itself could choose its inhabitants, that it had a life beyond the walls and beams, was something he could not easily process. He took a careful step forward, testing the waters. Chosen for what, exactly? The third woman, whose presence had been quiet until now, let out a low hum, almost like a soft vibration through the floorboards. She was slightly shorter than the others, but her shoulders were broad. Her movements carried strength and control. Her hair was dark, nearly black, and her eyes reflected a silver-gray light that seemed to flicker in the waning sunlight. "To learn," she said, "to endure, and to see what others cannot. You may think you are buying a house, Mr. McAllister, but you are stepping into a history that has no end. Many have tried to settle here. Most fail." Thaddeus swallowed hard, a mix of fear and fascination gripping him. "History?" he asked. "I thought this place had been abandoned. People left, I thought." "They did leave," the tallest woman replied, her voice softening slightly, but not without leaving a mark. "The house keeps all that has passed through it. Every footstep, every word, every life that has lingered here is recorded in the walls. It remembers even when the world forgets. You may not yet understand it, but you will feel it soon enough." Thaddeus ran a hand along the rough wooden counter, feeling the grooves etched into it over decades. He had lived in many places, seen many buildings, but none had a presence like this. It was as if the house itself were watching him, weighing him, measuring him against something unseen. The thought sent a shiver down his spine, but he forced himself to remain steady. He had faced storms and hunger, wild animals, and treacherous trails. He would not be cowed by an old house, no matter how strange or commanding. "Then what am I supposed to do now?" he asked. "I can fix walls and roofs, mend fences, chop wood. That's what I know. I don't know about keeping memories." The tallest woman tilted her head, studying him carefully. "You will learn. The house will teach you. But first you must understand the rhythm of those who dwell within it. We are not strangers, but we are not merely residents either. The house is ours as much as it is yours now, if you are willing to see it that way. You must respect it, or it will not let you stay." Thaddeus nodded slowly, realizing that no simple effort would suffice. This house demanded more than labor. It demanded attention, understanding, and a willingness to step beyond the ordinary. I'll try," he said, though his voice sounded small even to him. "I've always believed a man could learn if he tried." The women exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them that Thaddeus could not decipher. The kitchen seemed to grow warmer, the fading light bouncing off the copper pots and wooden walls in a way that made shadows dance. For the first time, he noticed the faint humming sound, low and constant, as if the house itself were vibrating with life. It wasn't loud, but it was present, persistent, almost like a heartbeat beneath the floorboards. "You hear that?" the second woman asked, and Thaddeus nodded. "That is the house speaking, not in words, not in voices, but in movement and vibration. Those who listen learn much. It's those who ignore it regret it." He bent down slightly, placing a hand on the floor, feeling the subtle pulse beneath the boards. It was faint, almost imperceptible at first, but it was there, steady and deliberate. Thaddeus straightened, a mix of awe and unease filling him. He had thought he was buying a home. Instead, he had stepped into a living entity, one that had a mind and a will of its own. "I never imagined a house could do that," he admitted quietly. "It's alive." The tallest woman's lips curved into a shadow of a smile. "Alive? Yes, and patient. It has waited a long time for someone like you. Remember, patience can be both a gift and a test. The time here does not follow the same rules as outside. You may find days stretching, nights lingering, and moments that feel infinite. The house reveals itself slowly, and only to those it trusts." Thaddeus ran a hand through his hair, trying to process it all. He had survived harsh winters, scorching summers, and the loneliness of endless plains, but the sense of being watched, studied, measured, unsettled him in a way he hadn't felt before. And yet there was a pull, an undeniable draw toward this house, these women, and the mysteries they embodied. "I don't even know your names," he said finally, trying to find some small footing in conversation. "I don't even know what to call you." The second woman's amber eyes gleamed. "Names. are less important here. Titles, histories, memories, they carry more weight than names. But if it eases your mind, you may call me Isolde. The tallest, my sister, is Eleonora. And the third, the one who watches the shadows, is Morwen. We are not merely sisters in blood, but in purpose. We guard this place, and we guard its truths. Thaddeus felt the weight of those words settle over him. Isolde, Eleonora, Morwen. Names that felt older than the land itself. Names that carried authority and power, and a quiet menace that suggested secrets far deeper than he could yet imagine. He nodded slowly, committing them to memory, aware that these were not women to be taken lightly. I understand, he said cautiously. And you said the house it chooses? You mean me? Eleonora's green eyes bore into his. It does, but choosing is not the same as granting safety. You have been called here, Thaddeus, not for ease, not for comfort, but for purpose. What that purpose is, only time will tell. The house will test you, the land will test you, and we will guide and we will judge. Thaddeus swallowed hard. He had expected challenge when he bought this house for $1, but this was something else entirely. He had expected repair and labor, perhaps loneliness and isolation. He had not expected sentinels, guardians, or a home that demanded more than sweat and effort. And yet, despite the weight pressing down on him, he felt a spark curiosity, resolve, and the faint thrill of the unknown. He looked around the kitchen once more. The house hummed beneath his feet. The sun dipped lower behind the horizon, casting long, shifting shadows across the room. The three women moved with effortless grace, chopping, stirring, arranging, yet all the while keeping him in their careful scrutiny. It was clear that nothing about this place was ordinary. Every corner, every object, every sound carried meaning, and Thaddeus realized that he would have to unlearn much of what he thought he knew about the world outside these walls. For the first time in years, he felt entirely unprepared for what lay ahead. And yet, he could not turn away. Not now. Not ever. And as the first stars began to pierce the darkening sky, a cold breeze whispered through the broken panes of the windows, carrying with it the unmistakable sense that this house, these women, and the mysteries held within would not reveal themselves willingly. Thaddeus McAllister had bought a house for $1. He had stepped inside, and now there was no turning back. Night settled over the plains with a quiet authority, and the house seemed to breathe with the fading light. Thaddeus McAllister stood by the doorway, watching as shadows stretched long across the floorboards, twisting and bending with a life of their own. The wind outside whispered through the broken windows, carrying the faint scent of pine and dry earth, and somewhere beyond the fence, a coyote's howl rose and fell like a warning. He could feel the pulse of the house beneath his feet, steady and insistent, as though it were waiting to see if he was worthy of its secrets. Eleonora had already retired to the back of the kitchen, settling at a table with a small stack of worn papers. Thaddeus could not see what she was reading, but the air around her seemed charged, the faint rustle of the papers echoing in the quiet room like distant whispers. Morwen, meanwhile, had moved toward the hearth, kneeling slightly to tend the dying embers of the fire. The warmth radiated outward, yet it was uneven, casting the room in pockets of golden light and deep shadow. Isolde remained near the center of the room, her posture straight and commanding, her eyes scanning the walls as if reading them like a book. Thaddeus swallowed, realizing he had no real place in the room yet. Every movement he had made, every breath, felt observed, measured, and catalogued. He had intended to clean, to repair, to make this house livable, but it was clear that here every action carried consequence, and every choice mattered. I should start somewhere, he said finally, his voice low, almost a whisper. The house needs repairs, and I need to understand it. Isolde's gaze lingered on him, sharp and piercing. Its understanding does not come from hammer and nails alone. You must listen first, feel the rhythm of the place, and notice what is hidden in plain sight. There are patterns, Mr. McAllister, that only reveal themselves to those patient enough to observe. He nodded, unsure whether he truly understood, but willing to try. He moved to the small wooden table where Eleonora had been, noticing the faint etchings along the edges, letters and symbols that were worn by time, but deliberate in design. He traced them lightly with a finger, feeling the grooves, the curves. the deliberate marks of someone who had wanted to leave something permanent. "Why do you keep leaving these marks?" he asked quietly. Eleonora looked up, her amber eyes reflecting the firelight. "So that someone might see," she said. "Or perhaps so that someone might not. The house has many stories, Thaddeus, and not all are meant for one person alone. These marks, they guide, warn, and remind. They are part of the memory of this place." Thaddeus's brow furrowed. "Memory?" "The house remembers," Morwen said from the hearth, her voice low and smooth, almost like the hum of the embers. "It holds every life, every action, every intention. Those who walk its halls feel it, even if they cannot name it. Some fear it, others embrace it. Few truly understand it." He looked around, feeling the weight of their words pressing in. It was one thing to hear strange stories in a town saloon about haunted houses or forgotten homesteads, but entirely another to be here, to feel the rhythm and pulse of the walls beneath his hands and feet. He realized that every plank of wood, every nail, every groove in the floorboards was part of something far larger than he had imagined. "I need to rest," he said finally, his voice betraying a fatigue he had not yet acknowledged. The day had been long, and the house had demanded more of him than any physical labor ever could. The women did not offer a bed. There was an unspoken understanding that he would find his own. He climbed the narrow staircase to the second floor, the boards creaking beneath his weight, and found a small room with a single cot tucked into the corner. The window was cracked, letting in the cool night air, but it was the only private space he could claim. As he lay on the cot, staring at the ceiling, he could not stop thinking about the three women. Eleonora, with her quiet authority, Morwen with her shadowed presence, and Eleonora's sister, Isolde, whose gaze seemed to read him more thoroughly than he cared to admit. Each of them carried a power that was not just physical but intrinsic, tied somehow to the house itself. And yet there was no malice in their watchfulness and lie expectation. The house, like the women, demanded respect and understanding. Outside, the wind shifted, rattling the broken shutters and making the floorboards groan beneath some invisible weight. Thaddeus turned on his side, feeling the pulse of the house through the cot. It was faint, almost like a heartbeat, but steady, insistent. He could not shake the feeling that the house was testing him, measuring his resolve, his patience, his courage. Hours passed, or perhaps only minutes. The sense of time in this place was unreliable. He could hear the women moving below, their voices low and occasional, speaking words he could not catch. At one point, a faint thud echoed through the house, like a door closing somewhere in the distance. He sat up, heart pounding, and pressed his ear to the floor. The house was alive in ways he could not yet explain, alive with history, memory, and presence. The next morning brought no comfort. The sun rose, pale and hesitant, filtered through the grime on the windows, and the wind carried a chill that seeped through his clothes. He descended the staircase cautiously, noting that the women were already at work in the kitchen. Eleonora hummed as she prepared a simple breakfast of eggs and bread. Morwen swept the floor in long, methodical strokes, and Isolde arranged herbs and dried flowers along the windowsill. "Did you sleep well?" Eleonora asked without looking up. Thaddeus hesitated, then shook his head slightly. I'm not sure. I felt watched. Not in a bad way, exactly, but aware. "The house feels alive. It is," Morwen said softly, her eyes lifting from the broom for the first time. "It has always been alive. Wait. It remembers those who have dwelt here, those who have left, and those who have failed. You are new. That is why it hums beneath your feet. It tests, it teaches, and it waits." Thaddeus ran a hand through his hair, trying to process it all. "And the marks? The carvings on the walls?" "They are warnings," Isolde said, her voice low and deliberate, "and guides. You may not see them as warnings yet, but one day you will. Not everything in this house is as it appears. Some things remain hidden until the time is right. Till then, you watch, you listen, you wait. That is your first lesson." The day stretched on with small, deliberate tasks. Thaddeus cleaned, repaired, and explored, but every action carried a weight he had not expected. The house seemed to shift subtly around him, boards creaking where they had been silent, shadows twisting where the light had once fallen steadily. Every room held a memory, every corner a presence that made him glance twice. The three women moved like wraiths, in and out of the sunlight, guiding without speaking, observing without interrupting. By evening, the tension in the house had grown. Thaddeus found himself in the back room, examining a pile of old journals stacked against the wall. The pages were yellowed and brittle, filled with handwriting that curled and twisted in unfamiliar patterns. Names, dates, and events he could not place leaped from the pages. And beneath them, strange symbols etched in ink suggested some code or language lost to time. A shadow fell across the floor, and he looked up to see Morwen standing there, her silver-gray eyes watching him. "Those belong to the house," she said softly. "Each page holds a memory, a fragment of lives that touch these walls. Some are instructive, some are dangerous. Not all truths are meant to be uncovered at once." Thaddeus nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He had expected a simple home, a chance to start anew. Instead, he had stepped into a living puzzle, one that demanded patience, caution, and courage. And as the fire sputtered in the hearth, casting flickering shadows across the room, he realized that the house, the women, and the memories they guarded were not waiting for him, they were testing him. Outside, the wind whispered through the cracked windows once more, carrying with it the faintest echo of laughter, of voices long gone, and of warnings unspoken. Thaddeus knew he had to endure, to learn, and to navigate the shifting lines between the house and its keepers. Failure was not just possible, it was inevitable if he misstepped. Ow! And yet, deep in his chest, a stubborn spark of determination remained. He had survived hardships before, faced the wilderness and isolation, and he would face this as well. The night came again, heavier than before, and with it, the sense that the house had stories yet untold, trials yet unmet, and secrets that would not yield to the unprepared. Thaddeus McAllister, the man who had bought a house for $1, realized with a mixture of awe and unease that he had not yet truly begun to understand the place he now called home. And as the stars emerged, faint and flickering, he understood one undeniable truth. The house, the women, and the history contained within these walls were alive, watching and waiting for the moment he would either rise to meet them or falter. Night had fallen deeper than usual, the wind outside whispering with a strange intensity through the broken windows of the old house. Thaddeus McAllister stood in the kitchen, the faint glow of the hearth flickering across the worn boards, casting the three women in alternating shadows and light. Eleonora's eyes were narrowed, sharp as knives, while Morwen's gray gaze lingered on him with a quiet weight that made his chest tighten. Isolde remained near the hearth, her presence commanding the room, her posture rigid, as though she were measuring the pulse of the house against his own. Thaddeus could feel the tension coiling in the air, thick and unyielding. He had spent days learning the rhythm of the house, understanding its subtle shifts and whispers, yet tonight was different. The air felt charged, almost electric, as if the walls themselves were bracing for something to happen. The faint hum beneath the floorboards, usually steady and rhythmic, had grown erratic, pulsing faster in time with his heartbeat. He swallowed, a bead of sweat forming at his temple despite the chill in the room. "Tonight," Isolde said finally, her voice low and deliberate, "the house tests those who dwell within it. You've learned patience, Thaddeus, but learning is only the first step. Understanding comes when the house decides you are ready." "What test?" he asked, unease sharpening his tone. "The kind you cannot avoid," Morwen said, stepping closer, her gray eyes reflecting the firelight. "It is not something you can fight with strength or wit alone. It requires trust, attention, and the courage to confront what you do not yet understand." Eleonora remained at the table, her amber eyes scanning over the worn journals. She spoke without looking up, but her voice carried weight. "The house has seen many men try and fail. Some left with their courage broken, some never left at all. You may feel fear tonight, Thaddeus. That is natural. Do not let it control you." Thaddeus nodded, though a knot of dread coiled in his stomach. He had faced storms, hunger, and isolation before, yet none of it compared to the quiet menace of this night. The house was alive in ways he could sense, but not name, and the women Eleonora, Morwen, Isolde, were not merely its guardians, but part of its pulse, guiding it, steering it, and watching to see if he belonged. The wind outside intensified, rattling the windows with sudden force. The shadows in the corners of the kitchen seemed to lengthen unnaturally, creeping across the walls with a life of their own. Thaddeus took a cautious step back, heart pounding, aware that every sound, the flicker of the hearth, the creak of the boards beneath his feet was magnified in the silence. "You must follow the rhythm," Isolde said, her voice almost a chant. "The house will move, the house will test, and you must move with it. Misstep, and the consequences are not kind." "What? What will it do?" Thaddeus asked, voice tight. Morwen's lips curved slightly. "That depends on you. Courage will guide you, but hesitation. Hesitation is dangerous. You have been chosen, Thaddeus, and tonight is the first true trial. The house will reveal more than walls and boards. It will show you its memory, its purpose. It's in the past that lingers here." Thaddeus swallowed hard, trying to steady his breath. He had expected a house to repair, a few challenges to overcome, but not a living entity, with intent and awareness. He looked at the three women, understanding finally that they were not just guardians, they were interpreters, guides, and perhaps the only anchors he had in a place where the rules were unfamiliar and shifting. Suddenly, the faint hum beneath the floorboards surged, sharp and insistent. Thaddeus felt it in his chest, a vibration that resonated with the beat of his own heart. He stepped cautiously, trying to follow the subtle shift of the house, but the boards underfoot groaned, uneven, as if testing his weight and balance. A shadow flickered across the far wall, and he froze, certain that movement had come from no ordinary source. Eleonora spoke softly, almost a whisper. "Keep your focus. The house will show you, but you must be ready to see." Thaddeus nodded, moving closer to the hearth where Isolde stood. The fire sputtered, throwing sudden bursts of light across the room. Then, as if in response, a faint glow appeared along the walls, illuminating shapes and markings that he had not noticed before. Symbols etched deep into the wood shimmered faintly, almost as if alive. He stepped closer, tracing the lines with a finger. Each mark pulsed subtly beneath his touch, sending shivers up his spine. "The house remembers," Morwen said quietly. "And tonight it will reveal what it has been holding. You must be ready to face what others could not." Thaddeus took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The house had been patient, testing him in small ways, guiding him with subtle movements and quiet hums. But now, the stakes were clear. This was the threshold, the point where understanding and courage would be tested, where hesitation could mean failure. The shadows shifted again, darker this time, moving independently of the firelight. A cold draft swept through the room, carrying with it a faint scent of earth and smoke, as if the house were breathing, alive, and aware of his every thought. Thaddeus's heart raced. He had never felt fear like this, not from storms, not from wild animals, not even from isolation. This was different. The house was alive, and it was watching him. "You must follow," Isolde said, taking a step back. "Do not fight the rhythm. Trust it. Trust yourself." Thaddeus nodded, though doubt flickered at the edges of his mind. He felt the pulse beneath his feet again, stronger now, almost like a heartbeat urging him forward. He stepped cautiously, letting the house guide him, letting his instincts follow the subtle vibrations and shifts. The shadows moved around him, curling and twisting, yet he felt no danger, only challenge, a test of resolve and courage. As he moved deeper into the kitchen, the glow from the symbols intensified. They seemed to form a path, a map that only revealed itself in the dim light of the fire. Each step he took sent a ripple through the floorboards, the house responding in subtle pulses, almost like a conversation without words. The women watched silently, their eyes reflecting the firelight, their presence steadying him, grounding him in ways he could not yet understand. A sudden creak came from above, startling him. He glanced at the staircase, the shadows shifting along the banister. Eleonora spoke softly, her voice carrying a calm authority. "The house tests those who walk here. Do not fear what you cannot see. It will guide you, but you must remain vigilant." Thaddeus swallowed, nodding again, feeling a mixture of fear and exhilaration. This was no ordinary night. The house was alive, the women were guides, and the pulse beneath his feet was both warning and invitation. He felt the weight of the past pressing in the memories, the echoes of those who had walked these halls before him, and realized that tonight would reveal more than just his courage, It would reveal whether he truly belonged in this place. The cymbals pulsed again, brighter now, and a low hum filled the air, resonating through the walls, the floor, and even his chest. Thaddeus stepped forward, heart pounding, and felt the house respond, almost like a living organism acknowledging his presence. The air seemed to thicken, charged with anticipation, and the shadows curled tighter around the edges of the room, watching, waiting. Morwen's voice broke the silence, low and deliberate. The final part of tonight is coming. You must move carefully. Trust the house. Trust yourself. Hesitation now will cost you more than you can imagine. Thaddeus nodded, taking another step. The fire flickered violently, casting the three women in sharp, angular shadows. The glow from the cymbals spread, illuminating the walls and ceiling, forming shapes he could not yet understand. Every nerve in his body was on edge, every sense heightened. He felt alive in a way he had not since leaving the wide plains, facing storms and surviving alone. The house pulsed beneath him, a rhythm that was both challenge and guide. Could feel the climax building, the tension stretching taut like a bowstring. The three women, Eleonora, Morwen, and Isolde, watched him with unwavering focus, their presence anchoring him, even as the house demanded more. Outside, the wind howled like a warning, rattling the windows and shaking the fragile balance of the room. Thaddeus's pulse raced, matching the erratic hum beneath his feet. He knew that the next moments would define everything: the house, the women, and his own place in this living entity. And in that charged silence, as shadows danced and cymbals pulsed with life, Thaddeus McAllister understood one undeniable truth. The climax was near, and the house was ready to reveal its full power. The night would decide if he endured, if he learned, and if he was worthy of the life he had sought when he bought this house for $1. The anticipation pressed against him like the weight of the very walls themselves. And every instinct in his body screamed to move forward, to face what was coming, to prove that he belonged. And yet, he could not see what awaited him beyond the glow, beyond the pulse, beyond the final test that would challenge him like nothing he had ever faced. The pulse beneath Thaddeus's feet grew steady once more, the erratic hum calming into a rhythm that matched his own heartbeat. He took a deep breath, feeling the house around him, alive, yet patient, aware of his presence, waiting for him to act with both courage and clarity. The glow from the cymbals faded to a soft, warm light, and the shadows in the corners of the kitchen no longer twisted threateningly, but seemed to settle, as if acknowledging his resolve. Isolde stepped forward, her green eyes softening for the first time that night. "You have moved with the house, Thaddeus," she said. "You have listened, observed, and acted with care. That is the measure of those who may stay, those who may belong." Eleonora's amber gaze met his, a faint smile touching her lips. "The house has tested you, yes. But it is not just a test of courage. It is a test of patience, humility, and understanding. Few see beyond the surface. You have seen, you have felt. That is why you remain." Morwen, still standing by the hearth, let her gray eyes linger on him with a quiet approval. "Tonight, you have earned the house's trust. It will guide you, but you must continue to honor it. Remember, Thaddeus, what has been revealed is only the beginning. There is still much to learn." Thaddeus exhaled, relief and exhaustion washing over him in equal measure. The fear, the uncertainty, the tension that had gripped him for days finally loosened, replaced by a sense of belonging he had not expected to feel in this old, weathered home. He looked around the kitchen, at the three women who had watched over him, guided him, and challenged him, and a genuine smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. I didn't expect any of this," he said quietly. "I thought I was buying a house for $1, just a place to start over. I didn't know it had a life of its own." Isolde's smile deepened slightly. "Few do at first, Thaddeus, but the house chooses carefully. Not everyone is ready to understand its memory, its rhythm, or its purpose. You are. That is why you are here." He nodded, feeling the truth of her words settle within him. The house was not just timber and nails. It was history, memory, and life woven into its very walls. The three women, Eleonora, Morwen, and Isolde, were not merely residents or caretakers. They were guides, guardians of the house's legacy, and now they were allies in his new life. The tension of the night began to lift, replaced by a quiet warmth. Thaddeus moved to the hearth, stoking the fire to life once more. watching the flames dance and reflect on the polished copper pots. The glow illuminated the kitchen, the symbols on the walls, and the faces of the women who had become both mentors and protectors. He realized that the house had not only tested him, but had given him a chance to prove himself not through force, but through patience, attention, and trust. Eleonora broke the silence, her voice calm and steady. The journals you saw, the symbols, the marks on the walls, they're guides for those who follow. They are part of the house's memory, but they are also part of its future. You will add to them, Thaddeus. Your presence here is a continuation of what has come before. Thaddeus ran a hand along the table where the journals had been, feeling the grooves and impressions left by previous occupants. Each mark told a story, each symbol carried a warning or a lesson. And now he understood that his own story would be added, a new chapter in the life of this living house. What about the past? He asked, glancing at the three women, the people who came before, the ones who didn't stay. Morwen's gray eyes darkened slightly, reflecting the firelight. Their stories remain here, in the walls, the floorboards, the air itself. The house remembers them, and so do we. Some were unready, some were unwilling, but you were ready. That is the difference. Thaddeus nodded slowly, understanding that his journey had not been about claiming a house or a home. It had been about proving himself worthy of its memory, its life, and its mysteries. He had been tested, challenged, and guided, and he had emerged stronger, more aware, and more connected to a world that existed beyond mere survival. The night outside softened, the wind dying down, the distant cry of a coyote fading into the stillness of the plains. The house, alive and patient, seemed to breathe with him, the pulse beneath his feet steady, welcoming, and assured. He felt a sense of peace he had not known in years, a sense that he belonged here, not just in this house, but in the rhythm of life it demanded and protected. Isolde placed a hand lightly on the back of a chair, her voice soft and reflective. You have learned the first lessons, Thaddeus: patience, courage, and awareness. But remember, belonging here is a choice you must continue to make every day. The house is alive, and it expects respect and care in return. Thaddeus smiled, the tension finally giving way to gratitude. I understand, and I will. I don't know everything yet, but I want to learn. I want to belong. Eleonora reached for one of the journals, turning its pages with care. Then your story begins now. Not just with the house, but with us. We will guide you, but the choices, the lessons, and the memories will be yours to carry forward. The fire crackled warmly, the soft glow of the hearth casting long shadows that no longer felt threatening. Thaddeus moved closer, feeling the warmth not just of the fire, but of the moment itself, a new beginning. Forged in challenge, discovery, and trust. The house, once a mere structure of timber and stone, had become a living entity in his life, a companion in the journey ahead. Outside, the first hints of dawn began to pierce the horizon, streaks of gold and rose painting the sky. Thaddeus stepped to the window, looking out over the plains that had once seemed vast and lonely. Now they felt alive with possibility, a landscape ready to witness his story unfold. He felt a profound connection not just to the land, but to the house and the three women who had guided him through its trials. You have done well, Morwen said, her voice carrying the quiet authority that had guided him through the night. The house has accepted you. You have earned your place, but remember, its lessons never end. You will continue to grow, learn, and contribute to what it holds. Thaddeus nodded, feeling a sense of pride mixed with humility. I understand, and I will honor it every day. Isolde's green eyes softened, a rare warmth in her gaze. Yes. Then you are ready. Not just for the house, but for the life that comes with it. You may have started with $1, Thaddeus, but you have gained far more: a home, a purpose, and a place in something far greater than yourself. Eleonora's amber eyes glimmered with quiet satisfaction. Remember, Thaddeus, the house and its keepers do not merely test, they guide. You have been guided, and now it is your turn to move forward, to learn, and to live fully within these walls. Thaddeus turned fully to the kitchen, taking in the three women: Eleonora, Morwen, Isolde, who had become his mentors, protectors, and allies. Their presence was a reminder that life was not simply about survival or toil, but about connection, understanding, and respect. I had come to the house seeking a fresh start, but he had found much more: wisdom, challenge, and a community he had not known he needed. The warmth of the fire, the glow of the morning, and the quiet rhythm of the house enveloped him, carrying a promise that the future, while uncertain, was full of possibility. He understood that the house would continue to test him, to guide him, and to reveal its secrets gradually. But he no longer feared the unknown. He was ready to meet it, to live within its pulse, and to honor the legacy it held. Thaddeus McAllister, the man who had bought a house for $1, smiled fully for the first time in years. He had stepped into a challenge far greater than he had imagined, and he had emerged with courage, understanding, and a sense of belonging. The house, alive and patient, had accepted him. And in return, he had accepted it. The wind softened outside, carrying the faint scent of sagebrush and the promise of a new day. The plains stretched endlessly, golden in the dawn light, waiting for the stories yet to be written. Thaddeus turned from the window, feeling the warmth of the hearth and the presence of the 3 women around him. Together they formed a bond of trust, respect, and quiet power, ready to face whatever trials or joys the future held. He had come seeking a home, and he had found a world full of life, challenge, and possibility. And as the first rays of sunlight filled the kitchen, he knew with certainty that this house once abandoned, mysterious, and demanding was now his sanctuary, his teacher, and his beginning. Thaddeus McAllister had bought a house for $1, but he had gained everything that truly mattered: a home, purpose, and the knowledge that life, when lived fully and bravely, was richer than he had ever imagined. And with that, he stepped forward, ready to embrace the life that awaited him in the house that had chosen him, under the watchful eyes of Eleonora, Morwen, and Isolde, and beneath the endless skies of the plains he now called home.